I'm just going to sort of take you through as many aspects of NLP as I can. So I explain to you how. So first, to explain what NLP stands for, the full form is Neuro Linguistic Programming. It's a tool for excellence. So basically, use it to excel in any form. So it's shortcuts. It's like excellence on steroids. It's a tool which you can use to fast track any process you're doing. Now, to explain each of these, so the word neuro comes from, we are made up of nerves. There is a communication network which happens inside us, our subconscious, our mind is all, it's based on neurons. And linguistic is, there's a language which you have, which you use for yourself and for other people. So that's the linguist part of it. And the third one is in software, there is a programming, you give operating instructions for an outcome. So that combination is where the name comes from, Neuro Linguistic Programming, which stands for NLP. So that's the basic funda behind it. And the science is basically looking at how we do things, what happens to our mind, how we interact with others, and constantly looking at changing it. That's what the basic essence of the science.
No, I'm busy. I'm in a meeting. Yeah, I'm in a webinar meeting for 1 hour.
So let me see if I can mute Dhiraj.
Yeah, she's fine. She's outside. I'm in a meeting right now.
So the guys who discovered this or got the science famous were two gentlemen called Richard Bandler and John Grinder. So what they looked at is two things. One is the tone of what we say, how we say what we say, what tonalities which we use. The second thing is physiology, how we stand, our posture, and the words and the language we use. So the hardcore part of NLP is made up of these three structures. And the applications are crazy. One is, of course, for yourself. You can constantly, there are multiple methods which you can change yourself. You can learn something fast, improve. I'll break up that for your own career. If you're a business person, for business, for relationships with friends, family, in multiple ways, how you communicate with people, how you give speech, how you present. The best part is for use for parenting, for children, and then you can apply it across all aspects. I'm going to quickly touch on all this, and you can pick up and get into the subject yourself. There are some broad concepts. One is the interesting concept of rapport, which for us designers is very interesting with clients. Rapport is when you meet somebody, how fast you connect. And rapport, you will find out that when you're with, say, your best friends or people you know, you tend to automatically mirror them. So the concept called mirror. So let's say if you're meeting and you're sitting like this, you will find automatically after a point where you know somebody, you'll automatically mirror them, which means that you're sitting in rapport. If you just observe close friends or people talking, you'll find they're almost a mirror of themselves. So the way you can use it is, if you're going into a meeting with a client and then you want them to subconsciously connect with you, you can mirror, but it shouldn't look like a mimicking. So if the guy drinks water, you shouldn't be mimicking the person, but if you exactly become a mirror of how they're sitting, how they're behaving, they're leaning forward. And the experiments with NLP, I've done this master practitioner course where you sit across two people and one person starts to imagine anything. It could be a random thing like a drive on a bike through the specific place. So if you sit exactly opposite and you're there, you're even mimicking the breathing pattern, you can tell the other person what they're imagining, right down to the color of the bike. And it's brilliant, this whole thing of how rapport works with mirroring. The second thing with NLP is a concept called VAK. VAK is three types of people are there. There are visual people, there are auditory, and there are kinesthetics. So it could be a combination, and you can observe a client. And again, there is a big borderline gray area between, are you misusing NLP for the wrong reasons, are you using it? So I would say if you look at client, it's the best way to look at it. You go into a client meeting and if you just observe and listen to a conversation, if somebody is saying, I can see the concept, I can see the future, if they're using visual cues, they are predominantly visual people. And it's not necessarily a designer is a visual person. Each person from their past will pick up one way of talking. Auditory person, which means that I hear you, I heard what you said. They're going to be using a lot of auditory languaging in this. And kinesthetic people are led by feelings. They'll say that, no, I feel for this, what I can sense, they're talking inwards. So if you change your language to an auditory or visual, you'll find these people build rapport much faster with that. And the other thing you can use is, there's something called pacing. So if you have a client who's yelling or who's angry, you can start by mirroring the person and you can pick up your voice slowly without them realizing to the same level. Then you can pace. Once you mirror, you start to lead and you can bring them down to a calm level and change the conversation. So it's very good when there's an angry thing, there is a fight happening. You can actually mirror, change pace, and bring them back to a calm state. So you could use it for even these kind of things. There's a lot of science behind this. There's a little more interesting thing called eye patterns. So if you observe when somebody is talking, you ask a question, ask about the past. How was your childhood? You'll find their eye goes to the left side. So if you think about it, say that, how was your home back when you were a kid, and you tend to move to this side. And if you talk about the future imagination, your eye moves to the right side. So good way, for example, with police or detectives or even a relationship, when they're lying and you ask what they did, if their eyes are moving to the right, it means they're reconstructing something which didn't happen. So you can even use that in a negotiation. Is the price actual? Are they, so you can also use the eyes to figure out personality traits or how that is. So it's another science itself, and there's a whole section on that. A very interesting concept in NLP is called modeling. So this is something which many of us do. Say, for example, if you look at, when we pick up design books or we look at websites or Pinterest, you're subconsciously benchmarking yourself. So that's one simple form. So you'll find people, if they make a house, they look at the best houses, so they bring the architect and they will want to become that. That's the basic thing of what everybody does. Some people do it well. You'll pick up a magazine on GQ or Vogue and you'll be able to change your whole style. So what modeling does is they actually take it to another level. So let's say they did an experiment with the US police sharpshooting force, where the marksmen, only the top 5% were actually crossing their expectation. So they got Anthony Robbins and a couple of guys. So what they did is they spent a few days with this 5%, and they went into everything, their physiology. How do they cock the gun? How do they hold it? How do they breathe before shooting? Where does the shoulder go? So they started modeling just that 5%. They codified it and they taught the remaining 95% that you do exactly this. So your physiology, everything becomes that. And they found that in 7 days, almost the remaining 90% had gone up to the expectation. So you could put it at another level. Say, for example, you can pick and choose. So if you want to be like Steve Jobs, an extreme modeling would go into what does he wear? You'll wear a turtleneck. You'll make your slide presentation with a clean this thing with a font. If you're looking at, so each of these you could pick up people, look at people who are investing wisely, and people take it to the extent of like they have experiments where they're observing people a black belt in 7 days just by complete modeling. You can, for example, if you want to be a cricketer, you look at Kohli and even say he's swinging the bat around before he does it. So you also catch the mannerisms. Is he going to the gym? Is he, how does he stand? How does he talk? So you almost ape the person and then you build up and get that quick codified excellence. So there's a whole science behind. You can read up on this concept called modeling. So I'm just giving you quick overviews of each of the concepts of this. So modeling can be done, let's say, with children. So many of us watch sport, but if you as a parent point out, say, look how he's holding the racket. Look how the hand swings up. What is the angle he's doing? If you're teaching tennis, for example. Or if it's a painter, that you buy that same set of paints they're using, the same kind of, if you want to paint like Prashant, you observe his videos, you see what he's doing, so that becomes a modeling right from the places they're traveling to. So you can take it to multiple things. You'll find that the time starts reducing for excellence. The next concept is language. This is also very good for children, for teams. So for example, you'll find in your team, there will be someone who says, I'm swamped with work. So the language is already making them feel like they're swamped. So you're already feeling like you're tired just by saying it. Or when someone says, I hate this person, or I hate to have lunch at this time. So the word hate is already making you in a different state. So by changing the language to, I'm a little uncomfortable by having lunch late, the whole thing is different. Or I say that I hate brinjal. If you change it to, for example, aubergine cooked in a certain way is something which I don't like. It's very, very different from the other one. So languaging with everything you do is one of the key things with neurons. Or if you say, I want to lose weight, that's a want to. If you say, I will lose weight, is another way of languaging. Then there is another step. So for example, if I tell you guys, don't think of a blue elephant. So what came to your mind is a blue elephant. So the mind also, the subconscious programs that way. If you say that I want to lose weight, the mind is only hearing the word weight. So it's not, it doesn't differentiate between negative or positive. Whereas if you say, I want to be in the best shape of my life, the mind is programming it very differently. So the language works very interestingly with, sorry, Kala, asking a question or you're scratching? Sorry, Kala. How you sort of program your mind. So that's about language. I just wanted to say one joke I'll crack in, which will sound very serious. So the next thing is a concept called reframing. Same languaging. If in your office somebody is saying I'm swamped with work, it's interesting to just crack a joke saying, get out of that, clean your feet, feel lighter and move on. So suddenly that mental visual they have of swamped goes away. Or if you say I'm stuck in a relationship, you'll say, no, that wash that glue off, it's probably in your head. As soon as you say the word wash that glue off, there is a reframing which happens with the person. Or if a child says, I can't do this, if you reframe it and say you haven't tried, it'd probably be easy if you try. So you're constantly reframing for somebody. Reframing is a very powerful tool with, again, with clients, or client says, I will never do this or I cannot do at this price. You'll reframe it by saying that currently you probably have a budget issue, but if I give you payment terms, would you? So you're reframing it. So constantly reframing changes people's stuck situation. The other concept is something called a double binder. It's also very good for design, for negotiation, a meeting. So the human mind is used to choosing. Let's say if you want to pick up a payment and the client you're following up with, if you tell them, can I pick up the payment tomorrow or on Tuesday, you are giving a double binder which they tend to want to choose between one. If you say, when are you giving me payment, then they're choosing and they're saying maybe next month. But if you are giving two choices, the human mind tends to 90% of the time choose one of those. Can I have a meeting with you either at 3 p.m. or 5 p.m.? It's a double binder. So you're choosing as opposed to giving them an open-ended suggestion. Similarly with kids, if you're saying you have to sleep, is a different thing by saying that you want to sleep now or do you want to sleep after 5 minutes? It's again a choice. It's a double binder. So double binder is a very powerful tool to make somebody choose between two aspects of a choice. The other interesting thing is something called state. So state is not Delhi, Ankala. So state basically is if you look at when you are unhappy, there's a lot of things which change. And if you observe yourself when you're depressed, when you're sad, like especially now during the COVID,
but you change the brand to
your
they
breathing.
will get thousands and thousands of
So physiology always gets into a state. So if you start to observe a state, what happens to you when you're angry, your breathing goes up. If you're really pissed off with somebody, right? You're shaking your head, you're walking around, you tend to breathe faster.
why are you doing that? This
Slow down. So everybody has a different state.
is the big boy one. This is the big boy one.
Who's watching Big Boss?
That is the big boy one. This is the one where big
One way to change your state is if you observe and you visualize yourself in your happiest moment. So let's say, for example, if you think back and there's a day in school or in an ID or there is a party or day Diraj bashed up those guys. We'll come back to that story later. So if you think of that state and then you start to observe how your shoulders were, how your breathing was, and you start to get into that state. So for example, if you just try this, if you're sitting up straight, your shoulders up and try and be sad in that state, you can't. Because your physiology just doesn't allow you to be sad when you're standing up or when you're breathing. So you can change your state just by changing your physicality. And there's another technique also I'll speak afterwards, but just to start to observe what happens in negative states. And your physiology is what determines the state. So it's your body language, your breathing. If you just start to be cognizant of those states and you can change it very quickly. So it could be a certain music you play, for example, to get into a state. So you can just observe these states to change things. Other thing is anchoring, which is another really good trick for changing status. Now, get into a happiest state. So close your eyes. Imagine, for example, the happiest moment you had. It could be when your baby was born. It could be an award you won. It could be a massive order you got when you opened the office. And then you start to play it back. Remember the sounds. You start looking at what happened then, how your body was. You get into that state and you anchor yourself. So one anchor could be you press this place between your thumb. Here, you press that down. And you keep pressing while you're feeling that. Another could be you play a certain music when you get into that state. So every time you want to get back into a state, you can just trigger this. You press this, you come back into a state. Another thing you can do is if you've seen the film, the serial Mentalist. So say for example, every time you're speaking to a child about a holiday or something, and if you just got your arms around their shoulder, for example, and that's the same thing you do over the years when you're talking of good memories. So every time they're low or they're depressed or sad, you just put your arm around the shoulder. You're anchoring that action to a good state. So it's a good way to change a mood of somebody else. So anchoring is another tool. There are smell anchors. For example, we all have anchors. There's a certain smell suddenly takes us back to a certain time in our life. Or there's a song which plays and suddenly you'll remember, let's say, your freshers party. So there are a lot of these auditory anchors, smell anchors you can touch. So you can start looking at these anchors. That's another very interesting area of this. Now this is a very strong tool for design, but this has got a lot of gray areas of, this is what scamsters use. Once you master it, you can scam anybody. So it's very important to understand embedded suggestions and use it in the most positive. So if you use it for positive good, it's an amazing tool. So for example, Kala, you can get it, you can date girls with this. So you can scam money, people's money. So a lot of things. An embedded suggestion, there are videos online of this guy called Darren Brown. I'll send the links, where he's gone and he's purchased things by just giving paper. And he's embedded the suggestion that the person receiving it thinks it's money. He's made actors select a pink bicycle for what do you call, you can embed suggestions. And there's an experiment where this guy, he calls these two designers and he invites them to design, very top end guys, for designing a logo. And they drive through and he gives them an envelope saying, open it after you make the logo. And it's a brief he gives them on this Zoom. Once it's over and they open the envelope, it's exactly the logo they designed is already in the envelope. Then they play back and they show that while they're driving, the car stops, there's 10 kids with the same t-shirt design which walks past, then they drive past, up the stairs. So every symbol in that was embedded as a suggestion. So you could embed suggestions in a restaurant you design, which makes people more hungry. There could be words you put. Now you could use it in, there's something called voice modulation. So I'm going to give you examples. Again, the gray area, use it well, don't use it with friends, don't use it with relationships and spouses, use it for bad clients. So that's the thing I'm going to talk about. So for example, and this requires a lot of rehearsal to get right. So look at this example. The sentence here is, when you're ready to go ahead, perhaps you can give me a call. So my voice modulation will switch to become a command. So the sentence will be, when you're ready to go ahead, perhaps you can pause, give me a call. So what the person hears is, you're ready to go ahead, give me a call. So the embedded suggestion is changed because of the stress which you've done in it. And similarly, you can do this typographically in logos. Now the key thing here is, it's your modulation. So you're changing it from a question to a command. The voice is becoming deeper and you're saying, you're ready to go ahead, perhaps you can give me a call. And without the person realizing and sounding like you're a funny guy, you got to practice, get it right, and you're embedding it to a client who's meeting you to say, you're ready to go ahead, give me a call now. So you could use it for health, for example. A doctor could say, I don't know how soon you will, and then there's a gap which says, begin to feel better. So the subconscious hears an instruction saying, begin to feel better, and you'll see that change for somebody who's unwell, for example. So you can talk to the subconscious using an embedded suggestion. So car sales guys, real estate guys, what factors tell you when there's a pause, it's time to buy? So your tone is changed and you're telling someone it's time to buy. So that's an embedded suggestion, which is into the sentence. So another one is, let's say you're at a client meeting, there's a pitch, there are 3-4 guys. And in the meeting, you ask this guy, let's say, for example, his name is Diraj. And you say, so I wanted to ask you, Diraj, when do you think you will, and then you have a pause. You say, close the deal, Diraj. And then you pass him a pen while you say it. So you're handing him a pen while you're saying, close the deal, Diraj. And without, instantly the human mind, somebody gives you, you're picking up the pen. So when he's taking the pen from you, you're given 2 suggestions. One is close the deal, Diraj. Second is he's holding a pen. Suddenly the back of the mind is, I've got to sign this deal. So that's like a double dual embedded suggestion, which you can put into, let's say, a deal when it's a pitch, for example. That's the science of an embedded suggestion, but don't use it till you rehearse, because you'll suddenly sound stupid if you're programming and say, now I got to pause, now I got to say this. It's got to look extremely natural and not like it's fake. Like another one is, are you able to? And then your pause says, and then it says, give me that order now. So your voice is changed to a command, and without realizing and sounding like a command, your voice modulation should go a little lower, and you're saying, give me the order now. So there, the embedded suggestion, though it's built into a sentence, it doesn't sound rude. These are, again, a gray area, but it's a beautiful science of what NLP is. Now, at the end of it, all this is basically on the subconscious. To explain, there is a conscious and subconscious. Our mind decides everything. So our subconscious is based on everything which has been programmed in our past, our experiences. And there's always a voice. And especially with us designers, there is that voice which says, I can't think so big. I don't want to make so much money. I don't think I can pitch against that person. I don't think I have the design ability. I can't scale. There's always a voice in our head which is telling us otherwise or not possible. And we probably, without realizing, are also programming our kids that way. So if you have language which says should do, you have to, you must, these are all programming to subconscious to be. So if you change it to a language of workability, even with kids, that if you do this, it doesn't work for me, or this will not work for you, or it's not good for your health, so you're taking the choice. So you're explaining the thing. And we all have these programmed subconscious thing. And what NLP does is it reawakens that subconscious. You start to understand what is that programming you're doing. If you just search for on YouTube, you find a lot of things called affirmations. So let's say, for example, you want to change your image about money. There are affirmations on money. If you just play that, put it into your head and go to sleep, it works with your subconscious to change your basically relationship with money. It could be with success. And some of us you'll find are awkward about success. When somebody says, wow, your work is really good, you'll end up cracking a joke or you'll change the topic. And many of us are that way because our subconscious feels, yeah, boss, not me. In fact, in NLP, they do an exercise where you go in the center and the whole room of 30 people are clapping for you. And you feel so awkward. You just stand there, nobody says, they clap for you for 10 minutes. And you've got to stand there and get accustomed to saying that it's good. I want to be clapped for, not feel awkward. And we all tend to feel really awkward when the limelight comes. So it's all basically do with the subconscious programming. So for something to happen, you've got to change that subconscious. And the last thing I want to end with is the concept of the 4-minute mile, which is what NLP is about. So before, the 4-minute mile was an impossible barrier. You could never run the mile under 4 minutes. And Roger Bannister was the first guy, but he spent time visualizing this run. He visualized that he did it. Like you'll hear cricketers imagine the day before they go to the field there. So he visualized it for a long time. He broke the barrier. And interestingly, that year, almost 10, 15 people then managed to break. You find it now under 10 seconds for the 100 meters. Once, Carter did it, and then Ken Johnson, then it is not a big deal. So we all have set these boundaries in our lives that we have a 4-minute mile. I can't do this. This is not possible. I can't grow so much. I'm too old. Now I'm too set in my ways. So always these 4-minute miles which we've got, which is really what NLP does. It sort of breaks these boundaries. It opens up that belief in ourselves. And I want to end with just suggestion of 2 books to start off with. So I've kept that here. Anthony Robbins has the book. Unlimited Power doesn't use the word NLP, but he explains all these concepts in the most simple way with exercises. This is a fantastic starter. And the other book is this called Subconscious Mind. So it talks of this whole thing of and how the subconscious affects healing. It talks about how cancer patients are healed with subconscious, children, relationships, spouses, where all that plays. So books I would recommend.